For more on Prime Minister Modi's speech and the current state of relations between India and the United States, we're joined by Sadanand Dhume. He's a resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. That's a pro-business public policy research organization. Welcome, sir.
Good to be here.
So President Obama has said he wants to set a new U.S. agenda with India. What does this mean exactly? And what do you think is priority? What's top of the agenda?
You know, over the past few years, you found that the U.S.-India relationship has been languishing, partly because it hasn't really been very high in President Obama's priorities, but also because the government in India was kind of slow and ponderous and unpopular. With the election of Prime Minister Modi, the United States sees an opportunity to reset the relationship, get things moving again, and rev up cooperation between the two countries.
So where do you see the biggest collaboration? Trade, investment, technology, terrorism?
The economy and terrorism are probably the top two. The economy, because that's simply the #1 issue for Modi. Modi was elected to revive India's economy. Before becoming Prime Minister, he had led a very successful industrialized state in the western part of India. And terrorism is something that he focused on in his speech at the UN General Assembly. And there's a sense that there is a shared set of interests with the United States. Even though the two countries may be threatened by different kinds of terrorist groups, or maybe looking at different terrorist groups, but more broadly, both find themselves threatened by radical Islamic groups.
So what do you think India wants from the United States, and what does the United States want from India? And can it be accomplished during this trip?
I don't think that anyone thinks that everything can be accomplished during a brief trip. But the trip is really to reset the relationship and fill it again with enthusiasm and energy. What India wants from the United States is capital. It wants support in international organizations. It wants a friend who can help it modernize its military. What the United States wants from India is a reliable democratic partner in the heart of Asia.
Do you think they will get that from one another?
I think they've made a very good start. I think that we're going to have to see ahead how these things actually pan out in concrete terms. But in terms of getting rid of the old atmosphere, which was a little bit negative, and replacing it with a new sense of optimism and a can-do spirit, I think in that sense it's certainly been successful.
So how do you see Modi's recent meetings with President Xi Jinping coming into play?
Well, that was really interesting because, you know, on the one hand, his meeting with Xi Jinping started with a lot of promise, right? There was this idea that China is going to be a very major economic partner for India. In fact, China is now India's #1 trade partner if you look at it only in terms of goods. The US is #1 if it's goods and services. But there are also sort of tricky issues with China, as we saw in the sort of border issues, border incursions, and so on. So what you saw with the Xi Jinping visit was, on the one hand, the positive on the economic side and the fact that the two seemed to sort of hit it off well. There were some informal photo ops, President Xi Jinping sitting side by side with Modi on a swing in Gujarat, for instance. But there was also the shadow of this disputed border between the two countries up in the east. So they sort of, on the whole, I think that sent mixed messages.
Thank you so much, Sadanand Dhume, and forgive me if I butchered your first name.
You did just fine.
Okay, good. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.